Shattered World by Jake Ozga. The world cracks and burns as it is harvested. Millions die instantly as destructive engines descend from orbit, immense drills reefed in the flames of atmospheric friction. Millions more are rounded up and taken to vast, misshapen structures that seem to appear overnight, spreading like barnacles across the shell of the dying world. Cities, fortresses, void ports, all once thought unassailable, now collapse into ruination as nightmare industry consumes the previously dependable foundations of the past. The new world is ruled by a tripartite blasphemy of the mechanical, the sorcerous, and the heretical, as all goodness and decency is debased. Things appalling and vile break through the cracks caused by this sundering, and darkness is consumed by greater darkness as the world plunges into the maw of chaos. And yet, a vision of hope perseveres. There is a narrow and precipitous path that leads from the nightmare towards a silver doorway into a better future. Those few who have survived the devastation of their world are scattered, lost, and without a leader. They wait for a hero. Wake up! The process of waking is slow and painful because he is reluctant to leave his dream behind now that it has turned to visions of heroism, and because the body he now inhabits is broken and wrong. The knowledge of this fundamental wrongness comes to him gradually but inexorably, like a rising tide that spills into the cracks and crevices of his body and his mind. He wakes in darkness. He feels his blood as thick and sluggish as crude oil as it pumps into his extremities. The flesh of his arms and legs tingles as his limbs come to life. New sensations, new awareness. He is standing barefoot on something warm and gritty. There is a smell of sap and unrefined Promethean, and he is mutilated. This last revelation sinks slowly to the pit of his stomach. Oh, he thinks. His thoughts come slowly. Oh, I am not as I see myself in my dreams. He reaches to his face with an unsteady hand, contracted into a claw where circulation has not yet returned. He pulls aside the coarse sackcloth blindfold and blinks lazily in the sickly light. He is in a strange and crooked chamber. The walls are uneven as if shaped by blind artisans. A single roughly shaped portal leads to a gloomy corridor beyond. He holds his breath as he looks down at his unfamiliar body. Rags and corpse-pale skin mottled with a nebula of bruising. With a finger he traces the edge of his ruined face, down from the stubble of his scalp to where the skin and bone terminate in cold metal at his jaw. He makes note of all the individual staples and sutures that connect his flesh to this machinery, this arrangement of crude metal shapes and wires that has replaced half of his identity. There is someone else there. A woman is watching him from the corner of the room. Her face is nondescript, with vague features that defy his attempts at recognition. Her silhouette is blurred. The perimeter flickers like a cogitator glitch. "You are broken," she says. Her voice is familiar and comforting, certainly not unkind. It was her that spoke a moment ago to wake him from his sleep. Something deep inside his skull goes click. Valves and pistons start to push and pull. Electroluminescent symbols printed directly onto his retina display a message. Systems online. Atomic fire bleeds into his optic nerve and the world takes on a sinister red hue. He tries to speak. His lips won't open. He forces them apart with his tongue. The skin moistens and splits. He clears his throat and his spit tastes of engine oil. Origin. Purpose. She looks at him patiently. She is as pale and ethereal as a ghost. Wait, he thinks. Wait, I can do better. He tries again. His voice is rough with disuse. This is what I am. This is who I am. She cocks her head and regards him with pinprick eyes like distant stars. Tell me what you remember. Only a dream of the end of the world. Darkness. Nothing else. Not even a name. He thinks for a moment. He should be angry at the injustice of it, but he shunts that thought aside, locks it away. In my dream, I was not this. He does not even recognize his own voice. It sounds like an alien thing, distorted and ugly, like a broken down vox. Inside his skull, there is a buzzing noise, like an insect has become trapped there, and he resists the urge to try and claw it out. His left arm is partly mechanical. How has he not noticed that before? It seems to have a mind of its own. Servo motors whine as it flexes. Strands of rigid cable bunch beneath waxy skin. Clumsy metal fingers open and close. He picks up the discarded blindfold and ties it to his belt. She nods once and turns to walk silently through the doorway, vanishing into the darkness. Feeling suddenly forsaken, he follows her, but there is no trace of her in the silent passageway beyond. He listens for a time and waits in case she returns, but she does not. Panic starts to take root in the suffocating stillness of inactivity, and so he sets out, choosing a direction at random. He finds himself in crooked tunnels that chew their way haphazardly through greasy rock and resinous plascrete, which is warm and sticky to the touch. His bones grind against metal with every step. His muscles feel strong, but the process of walking is arduous and painful. Crude mechanisms hiss and clank. A mockery of a body, he thinks. He remembers fragments of his dream like the feeling of sunlight on his skin, and he seeks that sensation out now in the waking world. The endless corridors are interwoven, like the burrowing tunnels of insects, without discernible pattern or reason. He wanders lost in this labyrinth for some time until eventually he finds a route that ascends and becomes wider before emerging into a valley of sorts. The air is thick with dark particles that stain his flesh. His one remaining eye is a system of whirring lenses embedded in the metal mess of his skull, and it sees through the haze with more clarity than he could otherwise manage. He stumbles forward, the waxy skin on the ground cracking beneath his footsteps. He climbs a mound of loose scree. The jagged shards cut his bare feet, but he does not feel it. Dust hangs heavily in the air, but he climbs up through it until he sees a red sky. Towers surround him, huge and uneven, emerging from the blanket of dust like blunt teeth pock-marked with cavities. Some stretch away into the sky, as tall as any structure he has ever known, their pinnacles spewing black smoke. There is an omnipresent noise, like the grinding of giant machines, the thunder of industry. Metal groans against metal, wheels turn and giant engines work. The sound reverberates from tower to tower. He sees movement, a figure darting like a spider between the distant shadows cast by a crooked building. A predator construct, a murder golem. He starts at the sound of the voice. The ghostly woman has appeared beside him, emerging from the gloom in perfect silence. In his dream, there was a silver door and sunlight on his skin, but there is nothing like that here. There is only nightmare. Overwhelmed, he dropped to his knees. "What is this place?" he says. "You don't recognize it?" she says. "I think I'm dying. There's radiation in my brain. I can feel it, like a furnace, poison in my blood. I'm falling apart." "It is all in your head." He makes a strange sound, something possibly intended as laughter. "That's what I was saying. What has been done to me?" The words turn into a cough and he looks at his hand. Thousands of tiny symbols crawl over his skin like insects, ones and zeros. He hurriedly wipes them away. I'm infested with this. A living code. It's all around me. It's inside me. Hallucinations. Phantasmagoria. She reaches for him, then hesitates. He is twitchy, scratching at his skin. The important thing is, you should not be alone. He nods. Ratchets click into place in his neck. I should not be alone. Finally, he thinks, something that makes sense. He walks for what feels like hours in the strange landscape with no direction in mind. When he gets tired, a machine embodied in his chest mixes chemicals directly into his bloodstream. The stims burn like fire for a moment, then his strength returns. It is hard to judge how much time has passed since he woke. There is no obvious day or night cycle, no sun visible in the endless orange haze of the sky. Infrequent winds carry the cloying stench of charnel gases. He walks along the coast of a rust-red sea of human remains, pulverized by appalling machinery. The scale of it is too much for him to comprehend. Aerosolized blood and fat forms a mist that lingers along the crimson shoreline. His footsteps in the sand leave pools that coagulate in his wake. Do you remember? He hesitates, uncertain of the authenticity of the memory that has just come to him. Do you remember we used to watch the stars together? The woman is suddenly at his side, coalescing from the mist like a phantom. She sighs. It is no longer possible to see the stars. The moons were harvested, broken up and rendered into dust. The smoke from the forges chokes the sky. Whatever was done to me, it didn't work, did it? Not all the way, I mean. My body and my thoughts are all broken, but I am still myself. You are unique, she agrees. Did you save me? My love, she says, you must save yourself. You must save everyone. He passes rivers of molten slag where islands of dross meander down flaming channels carved through dark basalt. He passes spires that scrape the clouds and emit thick black smoke, and manufactorums with no doors or windows, misshapen and bloated. There is no order to the landscape, no sense at all to the configuration of the impossible structures. With no fixed direction in mind, he walks for what feels like days along ruined paths through skeletons of toppled macrostructures, each footstep echoing down collapsed corridors and into the husks of rooms and hab units that appear as if they have seen no life for decades. Civilization discarded, replaced. From a distance, he sees a symbol he recognizes, sweeping avian wings that seems to try to encircle the world. A two-headed eagle wrought in gold and set atop a partially collapsed dome of a cathedral. Once it would have dominated the landscape in all directions, magnificent and inescapable. Now it is bent and broken and made impotent by decrepitude. The significance of the symbol escapes him at first, and he struggles to recall the word. Ah yes, Aquila, the sigil of an invincible empire and its all-powerful ruler. He wonders if that empire still exists. At times, radioactive ash settles so heavily on the ground that it reminds him of a winter snowfall from his youth. He recalls a time when they hiked in the snow together, when she stepped from the hidden path and sank up to her waist. He remembers her, though he cannot see her face clearly. She was overburdened with the equipment they carried as part of their training exercise. He laughed as he helped her back to sure footing. Military training? Had he been a soldier? Is that a true memory, he wonders, or another dream? He wants to ask her, but she has vanished. She appears to him infrequently. It frustrates him. I should not be alone, he thinks. But why then does she abandon me? He is not sure where he is heading, but some impulse leads him on. If I was a survivor, If I was now hiding, fearing for my life, would I seek refuge near to here? Would I want to be able to look upon the ruin of the world? He changes his mind, retraces his steps, and then heads in a different direction, out of the ash-swept ruins and down into the darkness of the fractures of the shattered world. "This is good," she says, appearing beside him once more. "This is well. Use your instincts. There may be others like you here, those who have fallen through the cracks." Squeezing between rusted machines, he finds a hidden pathway. When the path tapers out, he moves aside a makeshift barricade of plasteel sheeting, disguising the entrance to a cave, which then winds like a tunnel of a worm through the bedrock and into the deep foundations of the ruined city above. At the back of the cave, he finds a kneeling woman. She is wrapped in a colourless cloak and a hood that shrouds her face. Where the cloak has slipped, it reveals ashen skin, patterned with calcified ridges that form pale spirals. Where she kneels, her flesh has become one with the resinous floor. It has grown around her as if claiming her. He hesitates, ashamed of his own appearance. He doesn't want to scare the woman. Despite her strangeness, he senses kinship. "I am no murder construct," he says, and his words echo in the cavernous space. They sound feeble as they return to him. When the kneeling woman looks up, he sees that her eyes have been replaced by crystals or diamonds that reflect the red light of his own eye in 100 facets. She is blind, he realizes. She does not see what he is. He becomes aware of other figures, a dozen or more, hiding in the shadows behind her. These ones see him, but make no move towards a confrontation. "I won't hurt you. What was done to me, it didn't work. I am broken, but I am still myself." The other figures step closer. Like the kneeling woman, they are human, and like her, most are changed in some way, some more monstrous than others. Some possess abnormalities of the flesh, some others are fused with machinery, much as he himself is. "This is who I am," he says, uncertainly. "This is what I am." And then he tells them of his dreams. Time passes slowly in the half-light of the cave, and he sits and sleeps among the plascrete pilings and ancient debris. On occasion, he sits with the kneeling woman, and they pray together to a half-remembered deity. At other times, the people gather with him to listen to his stories that might be dreams or might be memories. Their expressions are blank, and their eyes are glazed, but their attention is fixed solely on him. He knows they are expecting something from him. "I am not as I see myself in my dreams," he reminds himself. "Though I may fantasize about heroism, the reality is just this. I am a fearful creature, a broken man, if I can even still be called a man at all. My dreams show a narrow path that leads to a brighter future, but how do I take my first step along this path? You are at a crossroads." Her voice is still a comfort to him. "You are faced with a decision, and though you do not know it, it is the same question that is asked of all men and women in dark times. And now it is your turn, so answer. How will you rise to meet an uncertain future?" He thinks of the silver door he sees in his dreams and all the possibilities contained within, waiting for a hero to seek them out. Is it delusional to cast himself as a hero? And then his thoughts turn to anger at the injustice of the world and at what has been done to it and to him. Maybe I was a soldier once, he thinks, but does that mean anything now? Or I could remain here, he thinks. We are safe, and one day someone may hear our prayers. And there is another choice. I can put aside dreams of destiny and responsibility and vengeance and choose to put myself before all else. I can leave these people. I owe them nothing. He leaves while the others are sleeping, striking out alone into the darkness as quietly as he is able. He feels a sense of shame that he tries to bludgeon into submission with arguments that he repeats over and over to himself like mantras. Why must the responsibility be mine alone? Has this life not taken enough for me already? And after all, do I not deserve to be happy? He retraces his path until he comes to the river of molten metal and follows it along. He walks for what must be several days until the river becomes a delta where it meets a black water sea, and his senses are overwhelmed by the hiss of steam and the smell of sulphur. There he finds a silver tower, needle thin and trailing red vapour from its distant apex, as if scraping a wound into the sky as the planet turns. At the base of the tower, a door. He has always known where to find this door, he realises, and at that door, she waits for him. "Do you know me?" she asks. "Even though I am a broken thing," he says, "do I not deserve some measure of happiness?" He has rehearsed these words, but now they sound pathetic to his ears. She reaches for him, and this time she does not hesitate. Her grasp is cold and unbreakable. She regards him. He looks into her eyes. His perception of her shifts. Something has changed. "Are you possessed of, what is the word, feeling towards me? Love?" she asks. "Let me see." A mechadendrite connects to a socket in the base of his skull with a click. She pauses for a moment. Images flicker up one by one like a picked feed in his mind's eye as she plunders his memories. Her eyes blink and flicker like supernovas within a new aura of darkness that suddenly surrounds her. She is indistinct, impossible to bring into clarity. She whispers, "Ah, but I am not as you see me in your dreams. You are broken. You have a memory error. Someone you knew in a past life. You mistake me for her. She refuses to leave you alone. It is most frustrating. I should cut her from you." Scalpel blades retract from her fingertips as she caresses his cheek. "But I must not be too brutal. This flawed humanity is what makes you useful to me. It is what makes you so adept in doing what other machines cannot." When a shepherd tends her flock, she will inevitably find that some of her creatures in her care will stray, and that, despite her best efforts, despite her searching, despite the development of her finest golems and chimerics, despite all this, the strays cannot be found. There are two faces to the woman now, superimposed one atop the other, blurred, pixelated. The motorized lenses of his eye whine as they rapidly adjust and try to bring the image into focus. Since time immemorial, primitive man has learned that often it takes one of the herd's own to find its lost kin. They would set one dumb beast free, scared and distressed, motivated only by a need to hide with others of its kind. The beast's instincts will lead it along the same path as its lost strays, down the same holes. When they meet, the creatures recognize their shared misery and shelter together. And then the shepherd makes a traitor of this beast. They track it, and they can see where it has been. The traitor leads its kin to slaughter. For a heartbeat there is clarity. There is one face that he knows and loves, and another, cold and mechanical. This world once had a population of tens of billions. I fear that number has been cruelly reduced, but this sacrifice is necessary to grease the wheels of the machinery of the great work. Our flock is now well constrained, and their spirits are surely broken, yet still we have strays. And so, if I would be a shepherd, then you must see what that makes you. Panic rattles through him, but the adrenaline is choked by sluggish blood. His thoughts swell as if caught in a vortex that takes him down and down. A device embedded in his chest pumps a new chemical directly into his heart, and his body feels suddenly heavy. This other presence, this rogue memory, is an irritant. Perhaps something delicate can be done. An excision. Something deep inside his skull goes snip. She detaches herself from the socket in his neck, her mechadendrite trailing a single thread of gore as it retracts. In his mind's eye, he has a fleeting image of snow. Let us see if that has resolved the issue. She smiles, and her eyes shine like stars, like diamonds, like nothing he has ever seen before. Actuators and motors in his arm seem to come alive under their own motivation. He takes the blindfold from where he has carried it on his person and hands it to her. He watches himself do this as if he is a passenger in his own body. Remember only your dreams. Remember that you must not be alone. She sighs once more. We'll try this once again. This time, do not come back empty-handed. She ties the blindfold around his eyes. He is unable to resist. Now sleep. He closes his eyes and drifts into unconsciousness. In his dreams, a world cracks and burns.